The military operation in southern Syria is almost over. None of these so-called pundits on Syria or the experts on the Middle East predicted that the Syrian army will liberate the so-called capital of the revolution in Syria, or the city where all these troubles started in 2011. So if we dive into the map, we will see that the entire Daraa city is liberated by the Syrian army and by the allied forces, and the Syrian army in the southern part of Syria liberated most of the areas by negotiations and reconciliation with the armed groups. Some of them laid down their arms, others went to Idlib. However, in this map, these two areas are also liberated. It should be updated. The Syrian army is now in full control of the borders with the occupied Golan Heights. If we dive in, we will see that there was an ISIS enclave here in this area. It was all black, and now most of the areas are liberated, and the Syrian army was able to secure the borderline or the border crossing with the occupied Golan Heights. Now, the only part or the only enclave left for ISIS in southern Syria are in Qusair, Beit Ara, and Kouye, and these three small towns will be liberated hopefully today, and they are on the borders with Jordan. As you can see, ISIS had a presence on the Jordanian and the Israeli borders or the occupied Golan Heights, where Israel illegally occupies this part of Syria. There are other developments happening in Syria that is worth to mention. A few days ago, we all remember that ISIS conducted an attack on Sweda. In this part, there is a small enclave of ISIS presence. These ISIS fighters, they came from Damascus. We remember that in southern Damascus, in this part, especially in Yarmouk camp and in Hajar al-Aswad, there were ISIS enclave, and the Syrian army bussed them to al-Badia in this part. We thought that it will be easy to handle ISIS in this part, but unfortunately, ISIS fighters invaded into Sweda, into the northeastern part of Sweda, and they killed over 225 civilians, and they kidnapped many Syrian citizens, men and women. However, the Syrian army sent reinforcement into the eastern part of Sweda, and also the Russians sent their reinforcement, and there is a military operation and airstrikes against the ISIS enclave in this part. On this map it doesn't show, but there is a black enclave here occupied by ISIS. I really hope that before the operation ends against ISIS in this part, that we could be able to liberate also or eliminate the ISIS terrorists from the eastern part of Sweda, and especially in al-Badia. Many things happening in Syria. I will mention also two other developments that are really important in these days. The first is Astana process. Astana process is happening in coordination between Russia, Iran, and Turkey. And today, the Russian ambassador to the UK, Alexander Yakovenko, he says, this is important, I believe, a statement says, Sochi talks on Syria have started, most representative and efficient format so far. Return of refugees on agenda. Did you know that 1.2 million Syrians returned to their homes since the start of the Russian military operation, and 1.5 million more plan to return now, including 200,000 from Europe? We knew that the 1.2 million returned to Syria, and including 800,000 to Aleppo. However, the 1.5 million planning to return to Syria, this could be a deal with Turkey, because in Turkey there is, I believe, 1.8 million Syrians living there, so there could be a plan to return some of them to Syria. And also in Jordan there is around 600,000 refugees, and in Lebanon there is 1.2 I guess million refugees now. So from the neighboring countries there will be a plan to return the refugees into the safe cities. But the 200,000 refugees from Europe, I believe there is over 500,000 Syrians in Europe. I'm not sure the exact numbers, because in Germany alone there is around between 300 to 400,000 Syrians. So I don't know what will be the mechanism, but I'm sure there will be a cooperation with the European governments to return some of the refugees who want to voluntarily return to Syria. So this issue is very important, and I believe on the agenda of Sochi talks is also the issue of Idlib, and we all know that Turkey is now issuing statements and threats that that the Astana process could crumble if the Syrian army attacked on Idlib. But according to the information underground, there is already reinforcement going to Idlib, and the Syrian army, as you can see, bombed Tlatamine yesterday, Khan Sheikhun, Kafar Nebuda, and also on Jisr al-Shughur. And in all these areas, there are Turkish militaries, and the Syrian army also bombed Atareb on the peripheries of Aleppo, that is still under the control of these so-called rebels. But there is no concrete plan, let's say, or we didn't see huge reinforcement going to Idlib, but the war of liberation of Idlib is coming sooner or later, and we hope that Turkey cooperates in order to force the militants to lay down their arms, as it happened in southern Syria in the city of Daraa. So we could save a lot of bloodshed among the Syrians in Idlib. But what will be the future or the destiny or the fate of the multinational terrorists? We know there are fighters from Turkestan, there are fighters from Uyghurs, from Caucasus countries, from the Uzbeks, many terrorists, including from Saudi Arabia, in this part. The last development that is also very important and is related to also the Turkish case, there was a meeting between the Syrian government and the SDF representative in Damascus. Delegation of the Syrian Democratic Council headed by Ilham Ahmed arrived in Damascus to hold talks with the Syrian government. The main point are the restoration of service facilities, that means the state institutions, in the areas protected by the Syrian Democratic Forces, increase in the number of the flights to Qamishli, that means from Damascus to Qamishli, and cooperation in military matters, and the discussion of a new constitution to resolve the Syrian crisis. We all know that the Kurdish militias, the demands were like they want separation, they want federal state, and they felt at some point they are protected by the Americans, and the Americans will help them to achieve these demands. However, when we criticize the Kurds on this matter, some Kurdish friends and followers, they were saying that, oh, you are anti-Kurdish and blah blah blah. We are not anti-Kurdish, we are pro-Syria. We want one united Syria, that the Kurds live side by side with the Syrians. Why should you have your own part of Syria? This is against the constitution, and it is against international law, and you don't have any legal right to have this piece of cake in Syria while you are not even a majority in this part. You are 30% of this part, and you are claiming to be the owner of this territory. So no, this part will return to Syria, hopefully by negotiations between the Syrian government. As you can see also in Raqqa, a delegation of the Syrian government reportedly arrived in Raqqa to receive the remains of Syrian soldiers who were executed by ISIS in Tabaka air base in 2014. So there is a cooperation, increasing cooperation between the Kurdish militias and the Syrian government, and I believe this will have a positive impact on the entire situation in Syria. And there are rumors that say the Kurdish militias could participate in the upcoming offensive in Idlib, but in my opinion, this is only, let's say, a military and a political pressure practiced by the Syrian government on Turkey in order to send the messages that if you don't cooperate with us to liberate Idlib and to force these terrorist organizations to lay down their arms, I will allow the Kurdish militias to participate with us to fight against these terrorists in your backyard. So this is an important move by the Syrian government, and it's a good move in my opinion in order to practice pressure on the Turkish side. Will Turkey bow to this pressure? I doubt that. However, we will see how the Astana talks will develop and how Turkey will react to the Syrian move when they finish their military operation in southern Syria and move their forces to the north. My friends, this is all for today. However, I want to mention one important thing, that my Facebook account, personal Facebook account, has been disabled by Facebook. There is no explanation provided by Facebook yet. We are in the 31st of July. I sent them a message from Go to Help Center, and they asked for my ID, and I sent them, and they keep asking me for ID. I keep sending them, but nothing happened since yesterday. And the ironic thing is they didn't only disable my personal account, but also disabled Syriana Analysis page and my personal Instagram account, and even my spare account that I created only to moderate Syriana Analysis page when my personal profile is blocked from Facebook. So as you can see, I put my all details and everything, but I didn't receive an answer from Facebook yet. I hope they return my account account because I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't post anything that goes against the Facebook community standards or whatever it's called. But unfortunately, there are many trolls on social media. They keep reporting so that Facebook acts alone. And also, guys, if you want to become my patron and help me in creating more content and creating more videos for you, you can participate. You can become my personal patron by joining on patreon.com/Syriana Analysis and then click on join to my community and support me on Patreon by $2 per month. It will have an enormous impact on my work because soon I am moving to Berlin. I will work part-time job and I will do part-time job on Syriana Analysis. So thanks to your support, I will be able also to survive and rent a place there and continue what I am doing, which is sending the message from Syria, the message of the Syrians to you, to the audience outside of Syria. Thank you guys for watching and see you next time.